Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Masonbrink. I'm the director of the Small Biz Hub here at Wright Brothers Institute. I want to welcome you to the co-sponsored event, Small Biz Hub, and also the Ohio Aerospace Hub. So this is Kerry Taylor right here. He's the director of the Ohio Aerospace Hub. Yeah, I recommend you meeting him. He's got all kinds of contacts and everything. Great guy. You're here for the CyberSecurity Collider. So it's a very important subject. I personally have been cyber attacked. I was one of the 8 million or whatever of security clearances. Yeah. And I got it.
All of
I'm sure you have. Yeah, so
I think it was 100%.
I haven't seen anything bad happen yet. I mean, probably because I'm broke because I got 2 daughters. But I'm keeping an eye on it. I got that life lock now. That hopefully, I don't know if I know will that work. He's gonna trash it. I bet he's breaking, but that's what I got. So today our speaker is Mr. Richard Marshall. He's very distinguished in the cybersecurity. I'm going to go through his entire resume there, but we're very lucky to have this gentleman here. He's been around a long time with the cybersecurity. I like that first bullet with the Associate General Counsel, Information Assurance. So you're like pretty much the architect of the whole thing, right? First, kind of.
Well, if you like it, yes. If you don't, no.
Yeah. Yeah. While I have everybody's attention here, I always take a little opportunity to market the Small Biz Hub. And if you're a first timer of one of our Collider events here, please take one of the connection flyers here. Because we have some very informative resources available here. Obviously, if you're here, you probably already hit the Collider page at the top there. I'm sorry, this is a eye test, but that's why I'm grabbing a piece of paper there. But the Collider page tells you everything that's going to be happening in the future Colliders. I try to cross-promote events in the Dayton area, the Dayton Development Coalition, the Entrepreneur Center, various places, but we're probably going to change that soon. We're looking at a better opportunity because my page is becoming a cross-promotional house versus the Small Biz Hub, so it might change that format, but we'll see. Also, if you're not on Twitter, I would highly recommend you get on Twitter. It's a really good resource for business, believe it or not. It's just not talking to your buddies or whatever, you know. It's a very valuable resource for business. AFRL Biz Hub is our tag, or whatever you call that thing. Tag. Yeah. And then I always like to promote our AFRL Small Business Director on. That's the actually SB director, which is AFRL SB, Bill Harrison. He's at AFRL. And then the CIBR office. If you're a small business, very important to keep an eye on the Air Force CIBR office, what they're doing, what they're promoting. They got some very valuable resources, including their Facebook page and also their YouTube page, which is great. They show a lot of success stories in the CIBR program. If you're not familiar with the CIBR program, more than welcome to ask me, and I can tell you a lot about that. I used to work there. It's a great office, a great opportunity for small businesses. And then I have various websites here. These are extremely valuable resources to hit if you're a small business trying to get into the government business area. And then also, one of the newer sites is the Dayton Tech Guide. This one is a Wright State Research Institute initiative. It's a extremely great resource for referencing Dayton companies and small businesses, categorizes businesses. And if you're not on that site, if you're a small business owner or a large business owner, and you're not on that site, I highly recommend checking it and getting your business on that site, okay, because it's gonna be used a lot. And then, believe it or not, we're still working on the Small Biz Hub website. I only been here 2 months. That was like my original initiative. Like, we got to have a website because nothing against the Wright Brothers Institute's website. It's lacking in the Small Biz Hub. So what I need you guys to do, I think I got everybody to sign in, right? I think so. Very important for historical purposes for me and stats. So, and then also, please give me your feedback of what you think of the colliders. You'll probably get a survey in your email box tomorrow. It only takes 3 minutes to fill it out. Okay, so just fill it out, send it back, submit it. Okay, it's extremely valuable to us because we got to know. You know, I'm providing a free service for you guys. I didn't charge anything to get in here, and you've got a great speaker here. So please take the time to fill that out. I really appreciate it. And then if there's anything else we can do for you, please let us know. You're more than welcome to come, like I said, come and talk to me for one-on-ones if you have small business questions. I know it's not an easy field to be in, you know, being a small business owner, especially if you're trying to get on base. It's pretty tough. And then also, if you have any collider ideas, please let me know. I met with Julie last week. She gave me a really great idea for one, so we'll be working together to try to bring that collider together, and hopefully it'll be in a month or two. So, got any ideas, let me know. Okay, so next I'm going to turn it over to Carrie. And by the way, anybody that's online right now, Richard will not be using slides, so you won't see anything on my shared screen. So just want to let you know that. Okay, so I think that's it. Go ahead, Gary.
Jim, you want me to need where you're at?
Oh,
Do you have the location?
actually, we're gonna get right here to the spot because that's the web.
I always want to be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. Kerry Taylor. I know quite a bit of you. Just a little bit of a foot stomper on the Ohio Aerospace Hub. Some of you may know what it is and some may not. It is a mechanism where I attract aerospace companies into the Dayton region. All right? And it all started back in 2010 under the Strickland administration. It was a way of attracting companies throughout all the metropolitan areas throughout the state of Ohio. So here's some seed money, and go hire somebody, and hopefully within this tight geographic domain that you would have in your city itself, you would attract those companies in there, and hopefully the people will stay in the city, will create a sense of energy and a sense of supply and demand, which is exactly what's happening in downtown Dayton. If you look in downtown Dayton here recently. So this was in 2010. I've been at it ever since. So, and part of the domain of companies that I try to attract is specifically in cybersecurity. And we've been, a few of you, we've been working through this issue here for the Dayton region for quite some time. And it's good to have an expert like Richard here. So I had some words here as a kind of like a, you know, to get us started. So bear with me. So here's what I wrote. I said, today we have attending a cross-section of Dayton region of professionals who directly or indirectly are involved with cybersecurity. So our colleagues at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and in the region are working diligently in addressing the cyber question across their weapon systems, our IT networks, policies, finances, infrastructure, SCADA networks, and et cetera. While our region may not be a cyber powerhouse, you know, like Washington, D.C., and Fort Meade and San Antonio, we are working together to address some of these thorny workforce technology and awareness issues, especially awareness. Yet we always try to, we're yearning to learn more, and so we have an opportunity here for us to listen to Richard, and so he can part upon some of the things he's working on. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I've been with him all day, and I'm learning something every minute I'm with him. So, also, just for your information, we also have Bob Tomic, off the side, a good friend of mine and colleague from back in the days when we were Navy second lieutenants in the Air Force. He represents a security compass and their cyber solution. And he's kind of underwritten and sponsoring Richard here. So anyway, meet him a little bit afterwards. Richard?
Thank you. Okay, some obvious disclaimers. Number one, I'm from the South. I speak fluent Southernese. Even if you have difficulty understanding me, I'll try to speak quicker. But being from the South, we speak slowly. I used to have an executive associate who was from Puerto Rico, and she spoke very quickly. And I commented to her, I said, you have to slow down. She said, well, you have to understand, I'm from Puerto Rico, we speak quickly. I said, I'm from the South, I hear slowly. So if it's important, speak slowly and I'll understand you. I never did get her to speak slowly. And I basically said, let's have a compromise. If it's important for me to understand what you're saying, speak slowly. If it isn't, then I'm not going to pay any attention to you. So that's my handicap, my speech handicap. So I will happily work with you and speak quicker if you need to. A little bit of background. I normally give presentations to boards of directors or in a classroom environment at the graduate level, and sometimes WebExes like today. I tend to give a presentation as if it's a seminar, so I welcome questions at any time. Don't hold them until later because then they'll lose some connectivity. So if you have a question or a comment, let's share, because this is a learning exercise for both sides of the equation here. And for those of you who are on the WebEx, I think you're to type in your questions and somebody will let me know what they are and we'll try to answer them. Let's go back a little bit in time. You're probably asking yourself, why is a lawyer associated with cyber stuff? All right, let me burst your bubble a bit. I hate the word cyber. I will try not to use it any more today in my presentation. I also do not like the word cybersecurity. Actually, that's two words, but I don't like it. And here's why. You're the CEO of a company, and I talk to you, we're going to talk about cybersecurity and what happens. Yeah, your eyes don't open up, your eyes close. You say, this is a technical problem. Give it to my propeller head, my geek. Let them worry about cyber stuff. I don't care. I'm a business leader. I'm not interested in ones and zeros. And when you say security, they think of guns, gates, and guards. You know, it's kind of like paying for a life insurance policy that you never get to use because when you're dead, you don't get the money, right? I had a CEO tell me that. Why should I pay money with cybersecurity when I don't know that I get a return on the investment? Why don't you sell me an insurance policy to keep the elephants out of my backyard here in North America? It makes just as much sense. And then I hit them with this. Don't think about cybersecurity. Don't even use that anymore. Oh, what am I supposed to think about? Think about your leadership role. Your responsibility is business development. Your responsibility is business success. What does your business success depend on? Digital integrity. Everything that you do in business is digitized. Your customer support records, your business plan, your financial plans, your medical history, personal assets associated with everyone in your company, it's all digitized. So what you want to do is make sure you don't have a digital disruption. That sounds like a social disease, but it really is a severe problem that most of us tend to ignore because we think it's always going to happen to someone else and not us. And I generally say there are three kinds of companies or three kinds of victims. Those who know they've been infiltrated, those who don't know it but actually have been and are, and those who completely deny that it will ever happen and just don't want to admit it. I mean, you can name a number of companies that fall into that category, and you can name a number of government agencies. Let's say you're the head of a government agency and you want to make sure your system is secure. So one of the things you do is hire a computer security expert who lives in Brazil. And it's one of the countries that attack us a lot, along with Romania. And you really want to have geographical diversity. So you make sure that you hire someone in Brazil who has a deputy who lives in China. Does that sound familiar? That's why all of our personnel records are now in China, because that was a security team that was hired by a political appointee. And if I say things negative about political appointees, it's because I've been there and I got the bloody t-shirt. It's frustrating. They don't know what they're doing in most cases. All right. Let me give you a little bit about background so that you'll have a greater appreciation for why I'm talking to you about this stuff. I came to NSA as a lawyer. I still am a practicing, well, I call myself a recovering attorney. When I walk in, and my job, it turns out, was not to do international procurement, which I thought I would be doing, but it was to be advising a group of technical people who hacked into computers. And I immediately said the same thing that you're thinking. What is that? Hackers are bad people, right? Do I look like a hacker to you? Picture me 30 pounds lighter, 20 years younger, with a ponytail. That was me way back then. Now, how did that happen? I go to NSA, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to be the legal advisor to a bunch of vulnerability researchers. That's a more polite word, isn't it? Makes you love them. They're cuddly. And I took the odd notion that I'm their advising attorney. I really should understand what they're doing. Now, all of you deal with attorneys on a day-to-day basis. You don't? Some of you do, sometimes, maybe. Do you embrace it as your new best friend? Do you want them to understand what you're doing? No. All you're interested in is getting a yes answer. And you will tell them anything to get a yes answer. And you don't have to admit to it. Your smiles of guilt tell me that that's what you do. It's all right, because I was on the receiving end. And these young kids would come in and tell me, we're going to do this, blah, 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 blah. And look at my body English and make sure I was going to say yes. And I said, So I said, I really want to understand what you do. And they said, the only way you can understand what we do is to become one of us. And that was the last thing in the world that I wanted to do, was to become one of them. Until I realized I had to adopt that mindset to understand what they were doing. So I'm an NSA trained hacker. I'm not worth a damn anymore. At one time I was okay in the laboratory. But it gave me an opportunity to understand exactly what they did. And that became critically important later. Let's fast forward from 1990 to 1997. We're going to talk about eligible receiver 97, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands and how many of you have heard of eligible receiver 97. You have. Tell me what it was all about.
Well, what it actually was is who could actually take control of the information, how you got control of the information, and if you had any right to disperse the information.
Okay, do you know who was the strategic guy on that?
The original strategic guy, about 96?
1997?
7? How about 96?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, June of 96, you're right.
Okay.
97 because of the fiscal year.
I know who was directly responsible for the oversight of that program.
Who?
Well, it wasn't the NSA.
Oh, it wasn't?
Well, they were actually the sub-vendor or the client for that program.
Okay, who actually led it?
I think that came out of the technology office of the president. Well then.
See how crafty I am? You thought it was somebody else. That's being a good.
Well, because I was a contractor on the other side of that.
No, that's fine. Here's the real story. You know, in Washington, like Dayton, success has 1,000 fathers and failure is born illegitimate. And that's what happened with eligible receiver 97. There were a group of majors and lieutenant colonels who said, information warfare is a thing of the future. We need to focus on that rather than heat blast and fragmentation. And you got a bunch of old guys old guys, because they didn't have gals in general positions then like we do now. And they said, wait a minute, we're not interested in ones and zeros in the laboratory. That doesn't create a physical effect. So this is a waste of time, go away. Well, they kept persisting, and finally the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, the only way to shut these folks up is to have an exercise. And every year they had an exercise called eligible receiver, again showing their guys, and they like football, right? Those of you from Ohio really are proud of your football team, as you should be. So the thing was called eligible receiver 97, and he went to his lawyers, and they said, well, wait a minute, we can't hack into government systems because that's a violation of the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. That's against the law, and it's a felony. Felonies are kind of disruptive to your career plans because felonies result in a year or more in jail. Not necessarily an upward mobility exercise, right? So they came to me and they said, well, wait a minute, Rich, you got a bunch of guys who hack into government computers all of the time. Aren't you afraid of going to jail? And I said, no, I'm so close to what my team is doing, I could be an unindicted. In fact, I could be an indicted co-conspirator. If things go bad, I don't go visit them in jail, I'm in jail with them. That's how close our relationship is. Oh, well, so you're motivated not to go to jail. I said, I'm highly motivated not to go to jail. Remember, 30 pounds lighter with a ponytail. You don't want to be in jail. And I'll let you have your own little private moments thinking about that. So I said, here's the way to do it legally. I said, number one, we're going to be attacking systems that deal with DoD communications. Yeah, okay. NSD 42, National Security Directive 42, which is a classified executive order at that time. It's no longer classified because of a paragraph they deleted, which I can't talk about now. But basically said NSA is responsible for doing vulnerability assessments of DoD communication systems. It didn't take a brilliant lawyer to say communication systems includes computers, right? Because we're using them all of the time. And then there was a provision in the Electronic Communications Privacy Act that said the owner of the system can permit people to come in and test the efficacy of their systems. So being a lawyer, I like to have belt and suspenders. I've got NSD 42, I've got ECMA. And the JCS lawyer said, fine, then we'll operate under that. And I said, no, you can't operate under that. Why not? And I said, because you're not NSA. You don't have NSD 42 authorities. We do. So we took a team of relatively bright people, a couple of slow ones just to kind of balance it, you know, for diversity. And said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And this brilliant team put together a whole lot of stuff. And my job was to make sure that it was legal. So I talked to the NSA General Counsel, tell him what we're going to do, and he said, then I went through the legal stuff, and he said, okay, go and brief the DoD General Counsel. I said, sure. And I said, I'll set up an appointment for both of us. He said, no, you go by yourself. Now, there's a teaching point here, so remember that line, you go by yourself. So I briefed her. And before I went in to brief her, I realized that she had been part of the Church Pike Commission and hated NSA. Nothing like going into the jaws of the enemy to try to convince them that you're a good guy. So my approach was to explain to her that NSA had two missions. One was to exploit, that was the nasty singing people, the ones that you hated in the Church Pike. And then there were the good people like us who protected government systems. And the reason we were together is because we discovered vulnerabilities, one to exploit and one to protect. So we're here to protect you, to serve and protect. We're the good guys. She said, that sounds fine. I'm fascinated. I'm excited. Now go brief the Attorney General, Janet Reno. Yes, ma'am. I'll set up an appointment. No, you go by yourself. So I went in and briefed Janet Reno. Are you familiar with Janet Reno? She's big, like this. In her younger years, she used to wrestle alligators and win. And she is a command presence. She's absolutely awesome.
When she retired, she went back to it.
Excuse me?
When she retired, she went back to it.
She's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And we became good friends as a result of our discussion. But in any event, she listened to me very carefully, and she said, you know, I think you've covered all of the issues, but we're going into foreign countries. Are we violating any international law? And I thought, damn, nobody's ever asked me that question. Here is one of the first times I get to use my international law specialized degree, and I can answer this question. And I said, no ma'am, we're not violating international law because of the NATO Status of Forces Agreement. She said, what does NATO have to do with this? I said, absolutely nothing, except the NATO Status of Forces Agreement gives us a model for operating in all foreign countries where we have a presence. She said, okay, help me understand that. And I'm thinking, wow, I get to teach the Attorney General something. This is quite an ego stroke, right? So I said, it works this way. The host nation, Japan, whatever, they are responsible for providing perimeter security. The internal security is the sending state's responsibility, the United States. So when we're going through foreign governments, foreign places, we're protecting our internal communications, and that's our legal responsibility. She said, great, you're approved, go forth and do good. Now, I later learned that the reason I was sent by myself was because of this thing called plausible deniability. I'm reading your lips. There's a little thing in Washington, if you screw up, they can always say, well, we knew he was crazy. And I've been involved in a couple of operations where I've had to give my letter of resignation in undated ahead of time, so they could say he was a wild man, we didn't know what he was doing, and let it go at that. So that was a success story behind Eligible Receiver 97. We did a lot of reconnaissance, exploited a lot of vulnerabilities. The acting president in that exercise was a fellow by the name of...
Bill Clinton.
Who?
Bill Clinton.
Well, no, he was the actual president.
Oh, the acting
So
president.
there's my southernese getting in the way.
Okay, well,
The acting president in the exercise.
Oh, in the exercise?
Yeah, Richard Clark.
That makes sense?
It does, and so I like to say I invented Richard Clark, and I've told him this in person, that he hasn't slapped me, so I think he agrees. But that's when he became a cybersecurity expert and rode that pony for a long, long time and did a great job. I mean, one of the pleasures I had was working on his staff in the White House and helping to develop the national cybersecurity strategy. And quite frankly, now this was back in 2001.
Right after he got exiled. Or just prior to.
Right before he got exiled.
To Dartmouth.
I mean, literally, the document was signed by the president, and the next day he was en
gone.
route to some place outside the United States. If that document had not been over-coordinated and had been implemented as we designed it, we would not be confronting half of the problems that we're facing today with our digital systems. And then we tried again with Melissa Hathaway, who's absolutely brilliant. She worked for Mike McConnell, who was the first director of NSA that I worked for as a lawyer. She did a phenomenal job of trying to revitalize this whole program. Started under Bush, was later adopted under President Obama. And the point of telling you all of this, aside from the historical fascination, at least for me, is that change starts at the top. The responsibility for making sure your systems are properly protected resides at the top. And that's why you and I play this role of CEO. Because the CEO is the person who is responsible for making sure this happens. So when you talk to your CEOs, as I'm sure you do periodically, make sure they understand it's a leadership responsibility, it's a leadership function, and as soon as they realize that this is a leadership thing, then they adopt it and they want it to happen. If they don't, there are some severe consequences. And among those severe consequences are loss of business value, loss of integrity. Everybody's systems are compromised, as we've all seen. Now, I'm not too worried about the Chinese breach because the Chinese had all my information before. But still, it kind of bothered me because in my file is a number of foreign nationals that I've had. You know, you have to list all of the foreign nationals that you've had a close and continuing relationship with. And that doesn't refer to anything that's nefarious. It's just They were my neighbor, for example, 'cause I lived in Germany for a number of years. The Chinese have all of that, and that makes me feel a little uncomfortable to know that one of the folks that I employed was from China. Her nanny was from mainland China. And I really didn't want the Chinese to know all of that because the nanny's family still lives in China, and there's an opportunity